Thanks for joining us as we take a closer look at Galaxy Quest, otherwise known as
the fifth best Star Trek movie.
I guess so. I guess you could actually categorize this as that in a way. My name is John Newton, science fiction author, and I'm joined by Eric.
Your brother in Christ, Christian apologist, polemicist, whatever.
I don't know whether I'm going to, each time, I don't know if I'm going to actually say his name or if he's going to say the name. So we stumble on that. Before we get started, I want to take some time to thank you for helping launch my short stories going. I took a look at the ratings for this and just kind of blew me away. I have not expected this at all. Taste of Earth is now #1 in 3 categories. It's ranked top in those. And the second story, ironically, is #2 in across the board in all of its categories. And I would not have expected this in a million years for them to rank this high. And usually they'll start high and then they'll start to go down. But no, A Taste of Earth is still up there. So if you have participated in that, I wanted to say thank you. I appreciate anybody who's taking a look at it. They're free right now. So it's not like I'm making any money or anything like this on here. But I just want to get these out here as good science fiction stories, Christian stories that people can read and enjoy. And even if you're not Christian, there's still fun stories. They're interesting and intriguing. So why review Galaxy Quest? What made it great? And what Christian themes can we squeeze out of this parody? Out of any parody at all? Well, wait and see. Galaxy Quest is a 1999 parody and homage to the original Star Trek series and cast. It follows the washed-up cast of a once popular sci-fi TV show as they struggle with their mundane lives after the series has ended. When a group of aliens, the Thermians, mistakes the show for historical documentary, they enlist the actors to help save their species from a ruthless warlord, Ceres. The crew, led by the egotistical Jason Nesmith, played by Tom Allen, must rise to the occasion and become heroes they once pretended to be on screen. Through humor, action, and the unexpected heroism, Galaxy Quest explores the themes of redemption, transformation, and the power of unity in the face of adversity. Eric, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate this?
I'd probably put it at an 8.
I would do the same. I'd say it's an 8. Why would you put it 8?
I think they did a good job keeping to the comedy aspect without making it overdone. I mean, as far as there's that, and then of course there's no sex scenes. There's no really reliance much on.
I don't know about the
one questionable scene. Okay, there's one questionable scene.
It's again, alien related.
It was parody.
It's parody. Yeah,
it's supposed to be funny and poke.
Oh, that's not right.
Not at all.
Okay, but yeah, other than that, as far as sexiness goes, it doesn't rely on that. No.
It doesn't focus on that, and doesn't focus on a lot of extremely crude humor either.
Nope. And so, yeah, this is just a fun show. As far as parodies go, I think they nailed it. This show, even though now it's 25 years old, and I like to keep the things that are newer if we can, although we've done some really old ones like Planet of the Apes. This is, I think, had some staying power. I wouldn't say it's a cult film at all, but it does have enough qualities that people can still relate to it even now. And the humor, I think, hasn't grown old. It's still it's still up there and it's lasted over time. So we're going to go straight into spoiler territory. And being a 25-year-old film, we're really not going to spoil it a whole lot for you when talking about this, because the main thing is the gags and the humor and the transformation of the characters and things like that. So we're not really going to, even if you haven't seen this before, it's not what we say here. I don't think it's really going to ruin it for you. So they were kind of poking fun at this crew a little bit, and in a way that's also kind of lifting them up a little bit. I would say there's one character maybe in here that was for Wesley Crusher, maybe. This was the where is he? Oh, I got these out of order. 6? Nope. Yes, they are out of order. Do you have the one navigator that plays in here? And he does seem to be, he's in the original show, he was supposed to be this kid, and he's a navigator, and then he's older. I think it may have been the only one that was Star Trek Next Generation. So I'm going to take a look at, oh wow, we've got a lot here we'll take a look at the comments before we get in here, and you guys can chime in on this anytime you want. Yeah, you'll enjoy it. I guess you're talking about seeing the show. It starts off incredibly corny and stupid. Yes. Expect that.
I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's still, you can still sit down and enjoy it, even aged as it is, even if the CGI or graphics kind of suck, because after all, it's just a parody.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be funny.
It is. Go in there with a mindset that this is not a serious show, although that does have, a pretty good storyline. It's a typical bad guy, alien, want to destroy other worlds and show that he's in power and stuff like that. So you do have a nemesis in there, and there's some twists that are going we may not necessarily expect. But it's more the behind the scenes that goes with it, I think, is what happens with the characters, and they get the fans involved. And Hollywood could take a lesson from this one, too, because this is how you treat your fans, basically. Not only in the adaptation of the story, but they also brought the fans in here, too, with conventions that they were talking about and had them involved with it. Help them defeat the bad guys. Thomas Hall said, great movie. They got the spoofing right, equal parts poking fun and love the genre. Absolutely. I think it was just, if you want to probably use this as a model to say, hey, guys, if you want to do a parody and do it right, check this out. Take notes. And there were some other videos on YouTube that you can check out behind the scenes. I'm going to mention some of the things in here. Like I'll go ahead and mention it right now. The producer. So there was the original author that wrote the story that the Hollywood picked it up. They had a screenwriter and the producer and director doing it. But the screenwriter went to a convention. I think it was maybe a Star Trek convention in Pasadena, California. And he was just looking for material that he could use for this. He says, I got to check this out, see what these guys are doing, whatever. And so he walks into the restroom, the men's restroom, and he turns around, and there's 3 Klingons using the urinals, right, side by side, right there. And he says, this stuff writes itself. And so it ended up in the movie. I don't know if you guys remember seeing that or not.
Beginning.
Yeah, it was hilarious. So there's a bunch of stuff like that in there. And what this does is it's not saying, oh, these guys are a bunch of geeks just doing this, and they're so weird, and I'm just going to really slam them. No, they were just using this, rolled with it, and it works. So, poking fun of it and everything. It says, no Pamela Anderson running half naked through the lawn then. No, but Sigourney Weaver, let's just say that her push-up bra did pretty well, I think, with this. And that was it. I mean, they're not really showing much of anything, but that was part of the parody too.
Yeah.
To show her because she was just basically a prop in the movie or in the original series. And they had her just repeat whatever the computer said. And they played through that, right? With this. What did they do? They had her.
Well, they called it out first of all.
Yes.
They called it out. That was the main thing. It's like, at least you have a job. All I do is just repeat what the computer says.
Yeah, that's what, and you'd see that too. It's like the captain would say, check to see what's going on out there. And she's, computer, what's going on out there? And then the computer would say, and then she'd repeat it back to him. And she's, I can't believe I'm doing this. But each one of these characters did have growth, and we're gonna go through that here in a minute too to see what happens with it. Nothing gratuitous that I recall. Yeah, I had refreshed because I'd seen this several times, and then yesterday I rewatched it just to chill with my wife and stuff like that. And I would say you saw it recently too.
Yeah.
Okay, and just refresh my memories with it. Nothing. I could have my kids there, my teenage kids, even younger. There's some explosions, a little bit of shoot him up and stuff like that, but nothing. Well, the guy had his captain on his stick, right?
He had his. There's decapitated head.
Yeah.
There's also a creature that
getting tortured,
teleported, and then
yes,
inside out.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There is some of that. You want to have some younger kids.
There's some gore-ish stuff, but light in comparison to everything else.
Yep. And he got so Andrew Martin said, I remember watching the movies and got it on DVD. Yeah, so did I. So it made watching easier. Didn't have to stream it. He says, I remember that was so silly. Yeah. So there was some good. The pace up. I don't think there's a whole lot. I don't think there's any wasted scenes in here.
No.
I think they keep the pacing up.
Really good pacing, mixed in with a lot of humor. A lot of shots taken at the old film as being poorly written sections.
Yes.
Why is this a thing?
Why is it? Yeah. Why is this even here? So
there's no reason this should be here.
And the actors had a little bit of play into it a little bit when they were going through this. Tim Allen was saying when they land the shuttle and stuff like that, and said, well, we're going to open up the door. And Tim Allen said, well, don't you have to check the air or something like this when you go through? And sure enough, let's see. No, not Tim. There we go. Tim Allen, just so we make sure that we're who we're talking about. It says, make sure that don't we have to make sure that the air is breathable and all that. And the guy says, oh yeah, let's do that. And then they had one of the actors go ahead and like, what? Well, you can't do that. You don't know if the air's any good. And so Mr. Monk goes out there and make sure that the air is breathable. And just all these gags that are in there. So good stuff. Good stuff. So I want to ask the question of what made the show work. We're assuming it did. And we look at the ratings and how it's just had staying power. 25 years old. A lot of other films would just go by the wayside. And this is kind of obscure. I mean, but for sci-fi fans, this is like it hit it on the nose. So what did make it work? I'm going to go through a list here, and I'm going to see if we can get some interaction. I'm going to talk to Eric, and then you guys can pipe in too as well. This was a parody, and there are 6 things I'm going to go over to say what a parody needs to make it work. So this is a little bit of a writing class, so to speak. And we're going to check this out on this film. What did work and what didn't? So the first thing that I want to go over is for a parody to work effectively, it must, 1, understand the source material. Do you think, Eric, would you say that they understood the source material on this?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give an example maybe of where they understood it?
I'd say from beginning to end, as far as the shots that are taken, as far as making jokes goes, or the Tim Allen's character himself being extremely arrogant and then coming around later on.
Yeah.
I think is another well hit.
So why would you say, okay, so who was he supposed to be? He's the commander, right? This is kind of obvious. Who would he be related to?
Well, he'd be related to the original captain of the ship itself.
Okay, so Captain Kirk, if they're going on this, right? This is based on the original Star Trek. So William Shatner, and you can even see his pose when he gets on the chair.
Yep.
And he does the
even the slight poses, the pauses. They did a real good job keeping to this. I wonder how many episodes they had to watch in preparation for it.
That's a good question. And he's late for the conventions, and he does all this other stuff that the other characters. Come on, guys! He's trying to get them all involved in things. So this would be a Shatner-esque type of. Now he did not do the pauses on these things. He didn't do that, which I think was good because if that went through the whole movie, it'd be obnoxious. But So would you say that he pretty much nailed that one?
I'd say nailed it as far as the character goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Now all the other characters, maybe you do have Alexander Dane. Now this is the actor's name in the movie, Alexander Dane, who played Lazarus of Tevmik. And of course, this was Alan Rickman, the real actor behind it. But Dr. Lazarus of Tevmik, he wasn't really, I don't think he was supposed to be any particular actor in this, although you could have said he would have been Leonard Nimoy Spock.
I would definitely said Spock.
Yeah.
As far as closest character.
And what was his struggle that he was going through with this?
Getting
typecast and
being stuck in this one role. And this is really, when I looked at this, I saw a lot of parallels between not so much Star Trek, but Star Wars. With the original actor who did Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Alan McGinnis?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he got typecasted, and that's something that really annoyed the snot out of him.
Yeah.
So, and you can see that as one of the major struggles at the beginning of the
so you get typecasted, you can't find any more roles. Yeah, it was not really one that challenged maybe your acting abilities. You didn't have full range with maybe the character and stuff. And now you're doing all these conventions with all these nerds out here in their costumes, asking you stupid questions about episode 43. Did you do this? And why did you do that? Because you had this available to you. And he's thinking, oh, I want to go back to Shakespeare, being stuck like this. So, and I don't think that was necessarily incorrect. And that's why I wanted to bring that up a minute, because I looked it up to see if the actors who did the original Star Trek series, so William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest to Kill, all the original actors that were in there for the bridge crew, is there any record of them watching this and responding to this at all? And the answer is yes. I got something for each of them. And generally, their responses were positive. They thought, oh, this is really well done. They said, wow, you guys did a great job. Except for Mr. Shatner. He took it as an insult, at least at first, and then he changed his mind after a while. But
it kind of proves his point, though.
Yeah, because he was really the only one that was on the nose. He's, why me? Why are they doing this to me? So because you did want to, and there was this one spot where Alan Rickman's character, he's going out the door. Several times he's saying, "You're stealing my lines," and that's actually what kind of happened with the original Star Trek with Shatner and Nimoy, is that Shatner did have to have the best lines, the best role, the women, everything like that. So other than those two, there wasn't a whole lot of play back and forth. So I would say, would you guys agree? And I'm looking to check out the comments to see if you guys agree with this. Did they, if you remember this movie, because it might have been a while since you've seen it, or if you maybe never have seen it, did they really understand the source material on this? Do you think they hit the nail on the head? And this is not an answer to that, but Allen Guinness had a huge career before Star Wars. Nimoy did have a love-hate relationship with Spock. Yeah, I think he came out with a book afterwards that said, I am not Spock, and I think another book afterwards to say that I am Spock. So there was a back and forth. So yeah, Alan Rickman's character probably really was more like Nimoy in this. I think you're probably right with it. And Andrew says, with Sigourney Weaver as second place. Second place for what? Oh, as I don't know. What would she be? And his is her character here. So she played the actress Gwen DeMarco, who was playing the character Lieutenant Tawny Madison. And I don't know. I just got the impression when the actors are doing this, they were having a good time doing it. Not that I necessarily have to see actors they're paid fairly well. So does it really matter if they're having a good time? No, but that usually gets communicated through the film. So number 2. One more comment here. Best actors. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So the number 2 that we're looking at to see if this really matches, if it's a good parody, something else a parody must have is a highlight inherent absurdities. A parody should expose exaggerated and absurd elements with the original work. By amplifying these aspects, it brings humor to the forefront and invites the audience to laugh at all the quirks of the material. Would you say that Galaxy Quest did satisfy highlighting inherent absurdities?
Absolutely.
In what way?
I would definitely look at Guy as being one of the absolute absurdities. One of the characters who's was only there for one episode and of the original series, and then was crewman number 5.
Yeah, well,
and end up being stuck as crewman number 5.
Well, usually it's crewman number 5, but on this, because they had 5 other main characters, he was crewman number 6. But Guy Fleekman, and there's a one point where they're landing the shuttle, and he says, I should have stayed up. I'm going to die. I'm not going to die. I'm crewman number 6. And they didn't have a red shirt, but that would have been the other thing that would have added to it. So they say, no, you're not. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. He says, no, I know this is going to happen. And he basically says, I don't even have a last name. He says, sure you do. He says, what is it? No one can tell him what his last name was. So he knew he was going to die.
The other part is the plan they decide to go with is from like episode 81 or something like that. And he looks, no, I died in episode 81.
That's right. Yes. So yeah, that was totally it. So did they, besides the red shirt type of thing, and there was something about they had to go through these stompers during the, it's like, and Sigourney Weaver during that, her character during that time too, she's looking at that and saying, why is this so badly written? Why is this even in here? Why did they even do this? And they get out of this, and there's this fire and stuff like that. And when they come out, I had read that the actual screenwriter for this was off to the side when she came out like that, and she said, whoever wrote this should die, and she looked right at him when they said that. So yeah, I think they pretty much nailed that one with it. And Andrew said, yeah, the last name was funny. There's so many different things in here. I almost wonder if some of the actors were chiming in, and there's a little bit of ad-libbing that was going on. Number 3, balancing humor with affection. A good parody often strikes balance between mocking and celebrating the source material. It should show affection for the original while also poking fun of it, ensuring that humor doesn't come off as mean-spirited, which I have seen in a lot of different so-called parodies. Like, man, I just, that kind of ruins it, because your fans are the fans of the original source material, probably the people watching your show. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to shoot the fans. I mean, you don't want to, like, make fun of them.
Well, I think the another angle on this is the fact that it's not only just a parody of the original source material, but a parody of the fans in some way as well, mm-hmm. with them being worked in, and not insulting them, but having them as critical elements of this, but still being funny about it.
Yeah. There was a one point where one of the fans had come up during the convention and said, talking to the captain, says, we're just all wondering if it's, and the captain just blew him off. And he had heard, Tim Allen had heard while he was in the bathroom. He said, these guys are just making fun. He says, oh yeah, these guys are so stupid. And the actors, they're all washed up, and they really don't like the captain. And so when that happened, he just came out, and he saw this kid who had come up to talk to him, this fan, and he just blasted. He says, don't you know it's all fake? And so later when he calls the kid up, he says, I need your help with this. And the kid says, yeah, you know what? I was really thinking about what you said. It is fake and stuff. And he says, no, we're really on the ship and we need your help. I knew it. I knew it was true. So yeah, there is the balance of humor with affection at the same time, because they're kind of poking fun at the fans, but it's all said. It came across as being well-meaning. Yeah, because they give them accolades. I mean, they give the fans do have a position there. They bring the ship in. The kid goes out and gets fireworks and brings it back out and says, Mom, I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. And she says, with the fireworks, you're going to do this? And he says, yeah, I'm going to go out and the ship's coming in because they're having a problem getting through the atmosphere and everything like that. And the father looks at the mother and the mother looks at the father afterwards. And the father says, well, at least he's going outside. So, yeah.
A lot of quick jokes.
Yep. Quick humor. Thomas Hall said, having three main characters and the rest background worked well for movies. Having a full cast works best for a show. I think that's why the original Star Trek movies were better than the Next Generation movies. That's an interesting take. And I think, you know what, we should probably do a study. I would like to do this as maybe, I'll put it as a list as maybe a live stream. Take a look from a writing point of view, because I haven't done a whole lot on writing, but I might do this just for it'd be interesting to look at the character setup, the buddy. You almost have buddy systems working out with these different characters like that. Like you have the straight man Spock, and he has a role, and the Doctor has a role. What about not Star Trek Next Generation? Stargate Deep Space, Stargate SG-1. With that, you have
five. Four.
And Tuvok, not Tuvok. What's the black? Teal'c. Thank you. Teal'c. He has indeed. He played the straight man. I mean, what was the balance with all these different characters in these shows? Not just sci-fi, but other shows too. There's a chemistry that tends to work well. And I don't know if you can necessarily force it. It seems like it happens over time, but it worked well in Stargate SG-1. It worked well in the original series. And it's interesting that you say that about Next Generation. I thought they did have good chemistry, but you might be right that it was too broad to work it out very well with everybody there.
Well, if you're doing an entire series, you have more time than a 2-hour movie.
That's true. And well, if you launch a movie after a long-running series, you may leverage all that history that they had together, so you don't have to do individual character development for the movie itself.
But I still want to see character arc for each of the main characters, and if you have 5 main characters, that's a lot of characters.
You do want to show short, and maybe not necessarily arc, but you do want to give them screen time, so that does make it difficult. Number 4, introduce fresh perspective. So we're going through the different things on a parody that's very necessary for a parody to work. And we're seeing if Galaxy Quest matches up with these. And so far, it's done a really good job for the first 3. Now, for the number 4, introduce fresh perspectives. While parodying, the work should offer new insights and perspectives on the original material. This might involve flipping the narrative, or focusing on minor characters, or exaggerating certain traits to create humor. Now, this one might be a little trickier. What would you say? Did Galaxy Quest introduce some new perspectives
from the show itself?
The show itself, yes. What would you say that would be?
I'd say using the fans, using the convention style.
Yeah,
having them worked into it gave a different perspective on what was going on, about the show itself, different perspective about the show itself. Okay.
I would agree with you, especially with the interplay of the different characters and how we often see how in this case we get to see how the characters and the crew have evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
The show is old. It's into syndication, it's reruns, it's doing all this kind of stuff. What happens then? And you got the fans doing their thing and the actors doing theirs, and there's kind of like this static setup that's just on and on and on. And Alan Rickman's character saying, like, I'm going nuts in this situation. And so that was a new perspective on it. So, yeah, I would definitely say that is it. And that's a bit of number 7. And I didn't mention the 7th one here, incorporate relative commentary. And that's actually what they're doing here too. They're making commentary on what's going on behind the scenes.
Now, that's pretty easy to do for a show like Star Trek, because you just have to go to like Reddit or any of the
Oh my
public
gosh,
posts
yeah.
and just look at what people, the top Reddits or the top posts about this topic and go through and say, okay, can we use any of this material in the show, making it into a joke?
That's right.
And
yeah.
it definitely looked like they probably did that.
Well, like I said, the screenwriter himself went to a convention in Anaheim, California, and he said it wrote itself. He walked in there and it's like there's all this source material. I'm wondering, I didn't look into this, but I'm wondering that the fans they had, all the extras they had watching, in the convention and stuff like that, how many of them were recruited at a Comic-Con? I mean, they would love it. They would probably say, sign me up, especially with some of the big name actors that are in there. Said, oh yeah, and I'll bring my own costume. I'll just do this. And it's like, okay, we don't have to worry about any of this. As long as you, keep your lines and don't get out of control and stuff, it works. So yeah, fresh material. So Thomas Hall said, the show, the actors, and then the actors as heroes. Yeah, so we're going to get to that in a bit with what happens with the progress of the movie and everything. Thomas Hall said, I say that that's what made this movie work, was it worked as its own universe. It wasn't all one for one Star Trek. They had built up their own, I guess, world. There was some world building going on this, right? They had their own aliens, their own characters. They didn't rehash existing like, oh, the Romulans are coming to see us or whatever, and they are the real Romulans. I think one thing with that too is you wouldn't have the freedom as a writer to say what you want with this. Say, so well, Romulans wouldn't act that way. You have your own aliens or new aliens that are introduced to it. So that would be cool. Number 5, maintain coherent structure. Despite being humorous, a parody needs a coherent plot structure. It should tell a story that makes sense in its own universe, just like you were saying there, even as it humorously critiques another. So it must be consistent and coherent. Would you say that Galaxy Quest was?
Mostly, yes.
Okay, and where would it not be?
Just in the parts that it's making fun of the original. Because this is for example, the Pounders at the end.
Oh,
definitely.
That was
didn't
not
make any sense within a stable universe itself.
Well, but they were
function. But as a parody, it does.
I would disagree with that because the Thermians were trying to replicate what they saw on the TV series. So they built everything to spec, even if it didn't make sense.
Yeah, like a timer stopping at 1.
Yeah, only. 1 second all the time. Yes. All of that stuff. That was they replicated it so it was the same. So for their universe, no, that I would say that did make sense. So would you? I'm interested to see if everyone else out there thought it's the same. Okay, so Thomas Hall said, I'd say that's what. No, sorry, it's a rerun. The only down point I think was the alien fans, but their main driver, I suppose. Alien fans, but their main. Do you know what he's saying there? No. Maybe you can clarify. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying there. So I think it did have number 5. It did maintain a coherent structure. Number 6, appeal to both fans and newcomers. Ideally, a parody should be enjoyable for both fans of the original material, those unfamiliar with it. It should include enough context or universal humor to be accessible for a broader audience. What would you say?
I'd say it did pretty good on that, but I think you're missing 99% of it if you don't know anything about Star Trek at all.
Yeah, you would miss a lot of the humor that is in here if you're not familiar with what's going on or not familiar with the original source material. Yeah, I'd agree. Andrew Martin said there he goes. Sorry. He has his answer. The main enabler for changing the actors to heroes, I felt they were a bit crazy. Okay, so we're
yeah.
Being what?
What he's saying, being a bit crazy. The actual aliens.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so are you talking about the Thermians?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay. Yeah. So I'd say that it's hit all of these 6 points fairly well. And maybe there's some other aspects to this that aren't covered in those 6 points, but it does very well as a parody. So, thematic review. This is the best part of the review, and we save it for last. We ask, are there any Christian themes in this movie that we can use to deliver a message of instruction or hope to a dying world? Finding unique Christian themes in a parody like Galaxy Quest can be a bit challenging, especially since it's all tongue-in-cheek. However, there are a few themes that might be seen through a Christian lens and could be unique to the context of this story. Eric, were you able to find anything in this?
I'd say the main arc of the main character, I think, would be the one that I would go to, where he is arrogant at the beginning. He is very, I'd say, cold to his crew, very mean in some cases, cutting them out of a lot of the jobs, a lot of the interaction, taking the limelight, everything's
Control,
about him.
Arrogance.
And at the end, he has been forgiven by his crew. So there's the forgiveness aspect there, as well as restored those relationships and is no longer focused so much on himself as with the entire group.
Okay. All right. I would say, yeah. And so maybe that's a lesson that we can all learn. You know, probably every one of us has at least some measure of arrogance or self-centeredness involved, and takes the Holy Spirit to weed that out of us, part of the sanctification process in our walk with Christ to get that out. And it's a good reminder that we need to take a step back and say, get your eyes off yourself, buddy. There's other people involved, and seeing it from their perspective is a good thing. So that's a reminder that we all need to have. I would say the same thing as what you're saying too, but from a slightly different perspective. Each one of these characters had a transformation during the movie, and there was actually a character arc for them. And that character arc was related to the theme of the movie. Never give up, never surrender. So this is the tagline of the movie. Never give up, never surrender. Each one of them was challenged by that, and you do see them transform based on that line. So if I look at that, the first character, the one that you mentioned, Commander Peter Quincy Taggart, played by Tim Allen. His starting point is that self-centered, arrogant star of the Galaxy TV show. He enjoys the adulation of fans, but is dismissive of his co-workers and oblivious to the fact that his best days are behind him. Now, his turning point was when he realized that the Thermians believe the Galaxy Quest show is real and that they're in genuine danger. He begins to understand the gravity of his situation, and his bravado is initially shaken, but he eventually rises to the challenge. At the end, he evolves into a true leader, embodying heroic qualities of the fictional character. By the end, he's no longer just playing the role. He's genuinely leads the crew in the Thermians to victory and learning humility and the importance of teamwork. Dun, dun, dun. So basically what you said here. So my question is, what about Dr. Lazarus Tevmik, played by Alan Rickman? Before I get to that, I'm going to check out a couple of the couple of the things here. Comments. Okay, I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. The main Christian theme was working together as family and binding together as an overcome challenge. Yes, and that was the never surrender, never give up. Absolutely, positively, you nailed it. And I love doing this with you guys because you can pull it out and we'll see different things on this too. We'll see different themes as we go through this and different perspectives. And my hope is that without Christianese or sermonizing or, oh, you see like this again, we would be able to take something the world has to offer and say, you know what, there's something of Christ in there, something of a message of the kingdom. There's some principle that we can pull out and be able to use that as a message to somebody. So I think you nailed it there. He said, which is essentially love one another. Yep. And that is the, two commandments that's one of them. That's the greatest. Thomas Hall said, Michael Heisler loved using UFO conventions as a place to discuss the gospel. They love searching for the mysterious. Sci-fi fans would be similar. Good conversation to be had. Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I did not know that. That is cool. You might go off in some, they might go, the person that you're talking to might go off on some tangent about crystals and vibrations or something like that. But at least there's a receptive audience in some way. And that's cool. That's cool. Fertile material. It especially probably helps if you dress up with antenna and green skin and stuff like that. Talk to these guys. He said, especially with Star Trek Utopia worldview. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So how does the Star Trek's utopian worldview lend itself to communicating the gospel? I'm asking that as a question to you, sir, your brother in Christ.
Well, that is the ideal that basically every nation is trying to pursue in various different ways, is the form of some sort of type of utopia.
Mm-hmm.
And the utopia shown in Star Trek a lot of times doesn't work with humanity being inherently corrupt.
Yeah.
It only works if humanity was not inherently corrupt. So that works in a Christian mindset at the end of time once we've been redeemed. Right. That can work.
Yep.
But at this point, not so much.
In our fallen state.
Yeah. So you can use that as a talking point.
Yeah.
To spring into it.
Yeah, the world's to come. And sometimes we can be a little negative. I think as Christians, very, very dark and negative about some things. But say, look at that utopia. Say, listen, what you're looking for, what you're hoping for in this future is going to happen. But there's an element there that you're missing for that, and that's Jesus. That you need to surrender to God, and this future world that you're looking for will eventually happen. We read the end of the book. We know what's going to happen there. So, very good point. So, if you look again at some of these characters, we have his Dr. Lazarus's transformation. He starts off as he's frustrated. He's classically trained actor who feels trapped and embittered by his typecasting as Dr. Lazarus. He resents the catchphrase, by Grabthar's hammer, you shall be avenged, and views his association with the role as a low point in his career. And his turning point shifts, his attitude shifts when he witnesses a genuine admiration of the Thermians, in particular, one of them, Quellic, who dies, expressing how much Alexander's character is meant to him. He says, you've been like I've always considered you like a father. And man, that's when he quotes that by Grabthar's hammer and goes after the alien that shot him. In a moment of emotional transformation, he fully expresses his role using the catchphrase of sincerity and avenges Quellic's death. He finds new meaning in his character and takes pride in being Lazarus. I think this is almost like somebody was saying in the chat earlier, this is the transformation of Leonard Nimoy with Spock. He says, I am not Spock. And then realizes later, says, okay, he actually did have some influence in Spock's character and the Vulcan background, I think. From what I understand, Leonard Nimoy was at least nominally Jewish. And the long live and prosper, the Vulcan hand sign. Do you remember where that comes from?
Isn't that I don't remember off the top of my head. I know it's something Jewish, but
yeah, it was. Okay, so from what I understand, the story goes, and this might be somewhat urban legend, his rabbi, when giving the blessing during synagogue service, he would pray and he would give this sign, and it might have been the Hebrew sin or sheen letter. I don't know why he chose that, but that was he would give this as a sign, and then Leonard Nimoy used that as the Vulcan sign for long live and prosper, which would be shalom in Hebrew. So that was translated. He did have an impact on that. So each one of the other characters too had their own transformation. When Gwen DeMarco, a lieutenant who played Lieutenant Tawny Madison by Sigourney Weaver, her starting point was she was frustrated with her role on the show, where she was mainly objectified and reduced to repeating the computer's dialogue. She was tired of being seen as nothing more than eye candy, and feels her character lacked depth. Where did she transform on this? Somewhere in here she was challenged. Throughout the mission, Gwen's role as the voice of the computer essentially becomes essential. It becomes essential to the team's survival. She realizes that despite her frustration, she actually does have a critical role to play. And her arc accumulates when her acceptance and remembrance of that role, not just as a pretty face, but as an integral part of the team. She moves from frustration to empowerment, providing her worth beyond her physical appearance. So we just say the same thing with the other characters. We see Fred Guan as Tech Sergeant Chen, played by Tony Shalhoub, and I love Monk. And yeah, so and seeing him as what was his shtick in this movie with being deadpan?
I don't know necessarily, but it came off well.
What was that one scene in the engine room where they're being attacked, and they says you have to keep going, you have to keep going faster?
Oh yeah, it calls them up, says, "Hey guys, they're telling me here if we keep going like this, the ship's going to blow up. Just FYI."
So I think they were playing off of Scotty saying, "You cannot take it anymore, Captain." And him being Scottish, I think it was the actor who played Scotty was actually Canadian. And so he was Canadian guy playing Scottish. And this guy, I don't know, maybe I'm pushing it too far, but Chen, Tech Sergeant Chen, was he supposed to be like he's Chinese or something? And then he's squinting in this photo. I don't know. I'm not sure. So we have his transformation. I'm not going to go through all these, but we have the others. And yeah, this guy as crewman number 6, he did survive, and he did actually have a role to play. And finally, it was good. So I think that when you get down to it, all these characters had different roles that they played. They became heroes. They were just playing heroes before they became heroes. Does that have any reflection on the Christian walk at all? And I think it does. The enemy is defanged, declawed. He's an old, mangy lion with no power except his roar. He was defeated at the cross. He has no power, no sting of death. It's been taken away. He can lie and deceive. That's the only thing he can do now. If he can get us to believe that we are defeated, then he has won without firing a shot, or at the very least, diminishes his own losses. In the Christian life, our walk with Christ, we can truly say, never give up, never surrender, because the victory has already been won. Coming up next week, we have, at least I hope it's next week, it depends on how things happen, we're going to be looking at the movie Cabrini. What is your legacy? Now, we just looked at another Christian film, and that was The Firing Squad, and I gave it a 3. It was awful. If you want to see that depressing review, check out that last one that was done a couple of days ago on Tuesday. Next week, though, I'm hoping we're going to have another show, a Christian show that is worth, it has value to it. And this is from Angel Studios. They've been producing good material, so my hopes up that they are for this. As much as I would have liked Firing Squad to be good, this is not a good example of Christian media or Christian shows. We should stay away from material like that at all. So until then, we will hopefully see you next time, and enjoy your weekend.